What is up, my Shadowverse soldiers, and welcome back to another Shadowverse Evolved video. Alright, so we are back with another lovely day of some tournament topping results. So they finally released the results for what happened in Georgia, this past regional that happened, and let's go ahead and figure what decks were topping there in Georgia. Okay, so we have our first place team. We have a Magical and Marvelous Brew. Congratulations, you guys, for doing well. And we have Boats Don't Sinks, Forestcraft deck, and Seat A. Alright, going ahead and engaging at the late game here. So we have the King Elephant line of Forestcraft, which is showing a huge promise in what Forestcraft is. It's just a huge giant elephant that's going to swing for a whole bunch of damage just for the amount of cards that are in your hand. And the fact that it also gets a reward is awesome too for its evolve. But looking at this deck so far, one card I wanted to point out that I've seen that's very different is Floral Breeze. If you don't remember, this card came out in set 3. You just look at the card on the field and return it to your hand, and you give your leader +1 defense. So this is a nice, pretty interesting take on putting cards back into your hand. You know, just because Nature's Guidance also adds you another card in hand, sometimes you don't want to go over your hand size. So Floral Breeze isn't a bad card to be looking for, especially using the Tweedledee and Tweedledum evolve just to go ahead and get this card in your hand because you only have one of it in your deck. So go ahead and find it, put it into your hand, and then when you're using Harvest Festival and stuff, you can bounce it, put a card into your hand, and you also get to draw, and you do get to heal. So there's like the best of both worlds there. Alright, so outside of Floral Breeze, which is a pretty spicy card to be running in this deck, and it's more targets to hit off of Tweedledee and Tweedledum, which is pretty nice. But there's another card that I wanted to talk about that's also with the combo 3 that also helps with, you know, Floral Breeze, of course, and that's Fashionista. So I believe I might have misspoke in the last top 3 video that we were talking about, I'm not sure, but I know this card really pairs very well with Sukuna the Brave and the Small, just for the fact that you play Sukuna on that combo 5, and then when you evolve it, it's going to be a 5-5. Well, check it. It's going to be a 5-5 with Storm, but with Fashionista on the field, it's going to become a 7-7. So this is a pretty nice card to be rocking. And just for the multitude of fact that, you know, if you're going up against a very aggressive deck and you hit that combo 3, they have like maybe a 2-2 that's on the field. Maybe you're going against Sword. This is a very nice card to pair in, you know, in turns with that. So I feel like Fashionista is definitely a good replacement for Flower Princess. But if you're not able to access Fashionista in your deck, or if you feel like Flower Princess might be the way to go in your deck, I'd say, you know, cater to however you want to in your deck. But I feel like Fashionista is going to be a very stable card in a lot of Forestcraft decks. Alright, so let's go ahead and peek at this evolved deck. So let's go ahead and talk about the one card that we didn't talk about before, and that's the Sukuna the Brave and the Small. So we talked about a little bit before with the Fashionista that it gets this huge buff when you use it along with it, but on evolve, on combo 3, you give this follower +1/+1, yeah, it has Storm, and it has combo 5, you give this follower +3/+3, so it's going to be a 5-5 or it's going to be a 3-3. But with Fashionista, it's going to get that +2/+2, so whatever version of combo that you're on, you can go ahead and add +2/+2 to that, and it's going to be boosted up. But looking at the other cards, we have Ancient Elf being as a 2 of, we have Tweedledee, Tweedledum, just to get your 1 cost since we have so many in this deck. You have Rose Gardener. I'm glad people are running Rose Gardener now because I feel like I like this card a whole lot better, just for the fact that you play this card and then you can evolve it and then just go ahead and recur that card back into your hand. This was more of my favorite, you know, option instead of Ishan Flash. But I guess in the meta that we were in, Ishan Flash was just the way to go, just to trade into a body. But now we have King Elephant to work on, and you know, we need as many cards as in our hand that we need to get into our big giant elephant to be as big as they can be. And then we have the 1 of Crystallitia and then the 1 of King Elephant. So congratulations, Boats Don't Sink, for getting first place at Seat A. And let's figure out what the Seat B list looks like. And moving on, we have G. Gordon's Dragoncraft deck. So honestly, I could say a whole lot about Dragoncraft because this is my least favorite craft because I play Runecraft. But this is still, I'm not going to discredit Dragoncraft. This is a very strong craft, and the fact that if you didn't watch our Market Watch video, I'll put a link up here below, and you can see that Dragoncraft is actually slowly becoming affordable. So if you want to get into Dragoncraft, this is one of the decks that you can definitely top with at an event. But the version of Dragoncraft we're looking at is Discard Dragon. So we haven't seen a list with Discard Dragon in quite some time. At least I haven't laid my eyes on it. But there are a couple new interesting cards from set 4 that really buffed up this deck. So let's go ahead and see one of them. Alright, so the first card we're going to be looking at is this Solid Dragon Nuke Fist. So it came out in set 4. So when this card is discarded, you may put it into your EX area. And then you select the enemy follower on the field and then deal it 3 damage. So the one thing that Discard Dragon really had a problem with was just his hand size, and having the fact that you put Trail of Light in there to make it a whole lot better. Now we have cards in Dragoncraft that you can pitch, and then they still get some value from being pitched. So we have Dragonute Fist, and this is one of those cards that's pretty good. So it's like, hey, I pitched this card, but I still have access to it, and that's pretty amazing. Another one of the new cards that I want to talk about is Star Phoenix. So this is a card, so during your turn, when you play a Dragoncraft spell, you can pay 1 and put this card from your cemetery onto your field. Alright, and this is one of the perfect cards that you could put in Discard Dragon, just for the fact that you can threaten 2 damage at any point in the game, and that's what you're always doing with Dragomancer's Rites. You're pinging them at the end of turn on interactable damage, and then when you play a follower, you're going to be threatening another 2 damage. So that's 4 damage in total, and your opponent's going to have to remove this every turn, because why in the world would you not spend 1 to just play this? There are certain situations where you don't want to play this, but obviously when you play a follower, playing Discard Dragons, your hand size isn't going to be the best. So whatever followers you can get, you definitely work with. Alright, and outside of that, this looks like a staple Discard Dragon list. Of course, you're going to be running the Shenlongs, the Fortes, all the big cost things that you're going to be doing. Riko Kashimoto, just people usually do run Olivia in this list, but with the addition to these new cards like Star Phoenix and Dragonute Fist, do you really have the space to play those things? So really, what do you want to run for your Discard Dragon deck? Because there are certain situations where you might not run into Olivia, there's certain situations where Olivia might not save you, so why not use more of the package to do what you do best and discard and get some value out of the cards that you discard. Alright, so peeking at the Evolve deck, and we'll definitely get to our star card here. So we have 1 of Bellringer, the 1 of Dragon Tamer, and then we have 2 of the Star Phoenix. So when you evolve this card on strike, you select the enemy farmland field and you deal it 2 damage. So you essentially play this follower for 1, and then you're able to evolve it when it comes back into your turn. Or if you played that follower on your turn and then you still have the extra play points and you didn't evolve that turn, go ahead and swing into Star Phoenix, swing into a follower, and then if you're against like maybe aggro sword or something like that, you can get rid of a follower that's definitely aggroing you down. But that's the scary thing about going against aggro sword, is that it's just one of those decks that can definitely get under you and you won't be able to set up. But I feel like Discard Dragon definitely has a chance, because as soon as you play Dracomancer's Rites, you heal, you get rid of a card out of your hand, and then you're able to ping one of those followers. Alright, so getting back into the Evolve deck, so we have 2 of Forte, the 1 of Shenlong, and the 3 of Carrots for the Oguri Cat finish. So shout out to G Gordon for getting first place in Seat B. I hope you guys did well, and I hope you enjoy your prizing. So let's go ahead and figure out what deck was in Seat C. Alright, and we're getting into C seat, so we have Gosuneem's Swordcraft Hero Sword deck. Alright guys, so the amount of things that I can say about Swordcraft is just insane. It's one of those decks that's just slowly getting everything, and it's just mind-blowing. So we have Armor of the Stars that's giving Mars aura, so it can't be targeted, so she's gonna sit there and collect value the entire game, which is pretty nice. And we have cards like Luminous Knight, to where if you fill up the board, or you start playing on curve where you have your 1-drops are swinging for 3, and then if they don't answer them, like if they don't have the Angelic Sniper, they don't have the Bellringer, then you're going for some really aggressive plays and your opponent's going to lose their life pretty fast. So you have lots of all range round here for Hero Sword. There are no really new cards that I really want to talk about, because we already know Mars is just really the new big card that there is for Hero Sword. And the rest of the Hero Sword list, we'll see what the difference is from this first place list. So Gosuneem, congratulations for getting a first place and doing well in Seat C. So let's go ahead and figure out what's in this Evolve deck. Alright, so looking at the Evolve deck, we should already know the staples. So we have the 2 of Amiro, the 2 of Floral Fencer, the 2 of Mach Knight, the 1 of Mars Evo, interesting, with the 2 of Valiant Fencer and the 1 of Albert. So I know they had to definitely allocate those spots, because most of the Hero Sword engine takes up, a good chunk of it, takes up 6 of those spots. And then you're obviously going to need the 2 of Floral Fencer, so that only leaves 2 more extra spots. So I can see why they did a split of the, the 1 and 1. So congratulations for doing well as the first place team. Congratulations for winning, and let's figure out what team got in second place. Alright, so we have the second place team, Discard Gang. So we have T-Bird 1096's Dragoncraft deck. And just looking at it right now, this is a very interesting take on Dragoncraft right now. Alright, so there are a lot of cards to go over. Let's go ahead and talk about the huge card that is probably centered around. Let's talk about PDK, Prime Dragon Keeper. So fanfare, when it comes into play, if Overflow is active for you, give this follower +1/+1 and Intimidate. It can't be swung at. When another Dragoncraft follower that costs 3 play points or less is put onto your field, you select the enemy follower on the field, deal 2 damage to it, and then deal 1 damage to its leader. Alright, so this is one of those cards that you're definitely not going to want to play on 3 just because there's just a lot of decks that can just handle it on their next turn. There are cards that you can really smart removal it or just deal 5 damage to it. But when you get into that overflow and it becomes a 2/6, now we're having a little bit of a problem. So yeah, they're probably gonna have to commit more into getting rid of it. I know they're gonna have those big play points, but you gotta remember you are Dragoncraft and you are ahead. So this version of Dragoncraft definitely is just a little bit slower in comparison to the other versions of it, but I'm glad that it was able to do some results here in Georgia. Alright, and just looking at the rest of the deck, I see that a lot of the followers in this deck just synergize well with PDK. So we have lots of 2-cost followers, lots of 3-cost followers. I mean, everything in here is just 3 or less. So you're going to be playing a lot of followers, but I wonder where you're going to recur the cards into your hand. So let's peek at the rest of this deck and see what cards help you draw and keep that hand size up. Alright, so the first card I want to go ahead and look at that I feel personally does bring the deck together is the Dragon Newt Scholar. So this card is just pretty cool. Just the fact that you can filter through your deck. Yeah, you know, it has to survive to really get its strike. But just to the fact that you can just, you know, go through your deck, the cards that you don't need in that situation you can get rid of, because deck thinning is deck winning. So that's what I've always said. And this card is Intimidate, so even though it's engaged, there's not a follower that can swing into it. So they're really going to have to use spells to get rid of this. And that's what I like about a lot of this deck. So it seems like it's more Intimidate. They're going to need a whole bunch of spells, and there's only a certain amount of spells that you can have in your deck to respond to your opponent's cards. Another card that's also going to be helping you filter through your deck and just help you figure out what's in your deck is the Dragon Summoner. So you're going to evolve this follower, you're going to look at the top 3, figure out what Dragoncraft follower you need. And there's not many Dragoncraft spells in this deck because most of the followers summon spells that help you get rid of other followers. So that's what I really like about this deck. So this is a very good handcrafted PDK deck. Yeah, man, the more I look into this deck, the more I am mind blown. So if anybody knows T-Bird, I would like to set up a deck interview just to see what the playlines were, you know, how this deck performed just to get in second place in AC. So if anybody knows T-Bird 1096, please let me know. I actually want to give them a solid interview. So please, I'm going to be looking for them for here on out. Also, and looking at another card that we don't really see that often, and that is Fire Lizard. So after you play PDK and PDK is established, Fire Lizard actually becomes really good. So you can either choose to deal 3 to an opponent's follower, or you can deal 2 to their face. So you're dealing with some card that just played for 2. It's a 3/2, but it has a good fanfare with, you know, that multiplicity of, hey, do I want to ping this follower for 3 or do I want to ping their face for 2 and then start going in for face. So this is a pretty interesting PDK deck, like I said before. All right, and we're going to look at one more card because I don't want to sit here and glaze over the deck the entire too much. We're just going to talk about another card we don't see too much, and that is Master of the Draconic Arts. So this is a card that is pretty interesting. It has a Sail and Ward, just 2 interesting abilities before, you know, getting into PDK. But just the fact if you have Overflow active, it gets +4 in Rush, so it's a 6/4. So you swing into an unengaged follower that's probably pesky that they're leaving up to just do massive damage to you or just to get over you. And then if that follower, Master of Draconic Arts, by the way, survives, then it has Ward 2, just so they have to swing into it in that very next turn. So this is a pretty interesting card, and the fact that you have PDK lined up with it too, to be dealing 2 to a follower and then dealing 1 to your face. So there's just a lot happening with this deck. So like I said before, you know, T-Bird, if you're out there, I want to give you a deck interview. This is a pretty interesting deck to get second place, so I'm glad you did very well. So let's go ahead and see what's in this Evolve deck. Alright, so looking at the Evolve deck, so we have the 2 of Dragon Summoner, the 2 of Shapeshifter Mage, 2 of Draknir, 2 of Dragon Warrior, and the 2 of Carrot. So shout out T-Bird for getting second place with their Seat A PDK list. And let's figure out what deck was in Seat B. Alright, moving on into Seat B, we have Unholy Canoe's Abysscraft Necrocharge deck. So looking at this deck already, we have lots of Necrocharge, we have the Fine Motion, we have the Hell's Unleasher, we have the Sergeant, you know, just lots of ways to go ahead and get cards into our cemetery to get that huge Necrocharge 10. So we can set up cards like Azazel, set up cards like Marazinski, or if you even mill cards like Israfil, you can set up Death's Breath on turn 6 so you can get that heal and do a lot of damage. Alrighty, outside of the main components, we do have a pretty spicy card that I have not seen in other Necrocharge decks. So we have Hell's Unleasher. So this is a 2-cost follower that comes into play and does nothing, but when you engage it, You can put this card into its owner's cemetery and then select a follower that costs at least 3 play points or less and put it from the cemetery into your hand. So I feel like this card can come up for multiple reasons, just for the fact you can get back a mummy, or you can get back Murzinski if there's like a huge follower on the field that really needs to get removed. So there are a lot of situations where I feel like this card would have been coming pretty handy. So probably one of is probably a good of, just to get a good feel for it. They were probably doing some testing, and maybe two was just like, oh yeah, I don't want to see this card in my hand too early. But when you see the card just right, or there's a situation where you might mill it and you'd be like, okay, well that's unfortunate, I'm not going to see it this game. But you know, there might be a situation where you might want to get a mummy back or something like that. So it's a pretty interesting Necrocharge deck. Let's go ahead and get into the evolved version. All right, so looking at the evolved deck, so we have the 2 of Mummy to summon a ghost. We have the 1 Mischievous Zombie Evo, the 2 of Murzinski, 1 Azazel, 2 Israfil, and the 2 of Carrots for the nice nature. All right, moving on into the next list that has a huge smile on my face, we have K3 MTG's Runecraft deck. And it looks like we have a spell chain variant of Runecraft. Alright, so to talk about Runecraft a little bit, so we have the spell chain variant of the deck. So the thing about spell chain is you want to get 10 spells into your cemetery as much as you can, but we have a big card called Giant Chimera that says we need at least 30, but we have Daria that makes it to where, okay, so we can cheat out as many followers that we can into our cemetery because all of our cards aren't going to stick. That's the one thing about Runecraft. We do not have an attachment to our followers. The only attachment that we really want to a follower is either Merlin or our Penguin Wizard and Agnes. So those are the 3 key cards that you want to keep on the field at all times. But you know, as a Rune player myself, you know they're not going to survive for 2+ turns. So go ahead and say bye-bye to those cards. They're going to be nicely used when you play the Daria though. They're going to help with the spell chain 30, so you can just go ahead and burn your opponent. But the one thing I don't see in this deck is the gold ring that helps you put a card to the bottom of your deck. So I feel like in this version of Runecraft, they definitely ran the 3 of Giant Chimera just so they can hit it off of Daria when they do go for that play. But let's go ahead and start talking about these small spell chain cards that really do help the deck perform pretty nicely. Alright, so the first card I want to talk about is Magic Owl. I don't feel like there's any other list that's running Magic Owl that I've seen in the topping list so far. So Magic Owl really does help with your spell chain just to go ahead and get that stuff rocking. If you have the Trail of Light in your hand, this card feels really good. If you don't and you have to get rid of your removal cards and you're going against Aggro Sword, it does feel really bad too. But you don't really want to get rid of your spells that are helping you help survive, so this is honestly a good and bad card in certain situations, as playing Runecraft is just good and bad in certain situations in general. But another card that helps you with the spell chain is just Penguin Wizard, and it's just been a staple since D-Shift and spell chain has been a thing. But just looking at the rest of the cards, it's just tons of removal. We have the Lamplets, we have the Surefire Bullet, we have the Fire Chain, we have the Wind Blast, tons of things, and then we have Agnes to help, just give that extra -1/-1 to something that's probably being aggressive into you. So I can see there are a lot of spells for removal, and then we have the Magic Owl that helps with those cards that you're probably not needing in the moment, like maybe you don't need the Chain of Calling at a time, so go ahead and get the Chain of Calling to maybe draw into maybe an Insight, or get rid of the Insight because you don't want to spend the 1 play point to use the Insight. So go ahead and get a follow out of it, get that card into the cemetery, draw a card, might be that Lamplet you need. Certain situations like that where Runecraft can really come in handy. But outside of the Magic Owl being one of the new cards and the Chain of Calling being the new quick spell that you're able to look for a Runecraft follower, which is pretty nice. So probably what the combo is that you literally see Giant Chimera and you go ahead and put that card to the bottom of your deck because you're not going to need that card in your hand if you're rocking the Daria for the late game burst. So you go ahead and fetch for that Merlin if you need it, or the Magic Owl, or the Penguin Wizard, or even Agnes. You just need a Runecraft follower that's not the Giant Chimera. Just the one scary thing that you're going to be doing is that you're going to be searching a spell with Merlin later in the game, which is pretty scary because you're going to shuffle your deck, and the next card could potentially be Giant Chimera. But yet again, that is why we run 3 of it. So I can understand why they had some success with it. So let's go ahead and peek at what that Evo deck looks like. All right, so peeking at the Evo deck, which feels pretty small. So we have the 3 of Agnes, the 3 of Penguin Wizard, the 3 of Merlin, of course, a staple, and the 1 of Daria. So congratulations for doing well with Runecraft. I know Runecraft is a very hard deck to perform with in this meta, in this current form, but when the Age of Kuon happens, we'll be seeing a lot more Runecraft happening. Alright, so we're moving on into the 3rd place team. They are last but certainly not least. We have G3LF Lanterns. We have Ways AC Forestcraft deck. Alright, so we talked a lot about the King Elephant version of Forestcraft in the Seat A first place list, but Way had a pretty interesting twist on their version of Forestcraft. So they have the Ivy Spell Bomb. So if you know Witch Bolt, it's kind of like the same thing. It's a 3-cost spell that does 5 damage to a follower, but it has a cute Forestcraft twist on it where on combo 3, you deal 3 damage to its leader when you do the combo 3. So pretty interesting take on it. The other outside outlier besides anything else that looks different in this deck, and it's the Silver Bolt, but outside of that, this is a pretty solid Forestcraft deck. So let's go ahead and peek at that Evolve deck. Alright, so peeking at this Evolve deck with this beautiful C2 leader. So we have the 1 of Bellringer, the 2 of Sakuna the Brave and Small, 2 of Ancient Elf, 2 of Chrysalitea, and the 2 of Rose Gardener with the 1 of King Elephant. So congratulations for getting 3rd place with your Forestcraft deck, and let's see what's in Seat B. Alright, so moving on into Seat B, we have Pigglesworth Swordcraft Hero Sword deck. Okay, an interesting take on Hero Sword. So one thing that I didn't notice was in the first list was there was no swordsman. I didn't see a single swordsman in that list, and that's pretty nice. So there were swordsmen in this list. This is one of the cards that you can get off of Mars. It's pretty nice. But they also did not have Novice Trooper in their deck too, and they also didn't have a huge top end or late game with an Narita Bryan. So I guess they probably thought they were going to go against, you know, some pretty solid control decks that were going to really get through to them. Which is interesting. Yeah, that's something to think about when you go into these tournaments. You really don't know what you're going up against. So Narita Bryan is still a good play, but I feel like personally, in my opinion, I do like the late game version of Hero Sword, or just Sword in general, just because of Leonidas is just so strong. If they don't get rid of that amulet, then your followers are just big, and they're swinging at followers that are engaged that probably swing at you. Of course, there's no healing, but you know, those followers are just so humongous. Like, what cards are really getting rid of them? But yeah, shout out to Pigglesworth with your Seat B Hero Sword deck. Let's go ahead and peek at what the Evo deck looks like. Yeah, so there's no Albert in this deck, so we have more space to run another Mars. So it looks like there's 2 of Amiro, 2 of Floor Fencer, 2 of Mock Knight, 2 of Mars, and then 2 of Valiant Fencer. So shout out for getting 3rd place with your Seat B Hero Sword list. And let's go ahead and look at the last deck. Alright, so we're here with our last deck, and we have Etos Dragoncraft deck. So let's go ahead and peek at what they have. So this definitely looks like a stable Dragoncraft deck. It doesn't have any very new elements. It's just, you know, what Dragon does is ramp, get into those big cards pretty fast. We have lots of con flags, just a 3 of con flags to get rid of their board. You know, Bell Ringers to survive, Blazing Breath, stuff like that. Dragon Song Flute just to have some pretty good things. We have Dragon Tamer because deck thinning is deck winning. Dragon Oracle, ramp, and then we have like just our big cards. We have Olivia and then Riko Kashimoto. So a pretty solid Dragoncraft ramp deck that I'd say so myself. So let's go ahead and peek at what this Evolve deck looks like. Alright, looking at the Evolve deck, we have the 1 of Bellringer, the 1 of Dragon Tamer, the 2 of Dragon Warrior, 2 of Forte, 1 of Shenlong, of course, and then we have the 3 carrots for the Ogre recap finish. But alright guys, that was all the decks that performed in Georgia. Thank you so much for watching. It was a pretty lengthy video, but thank you for getting along with it with me. If the audio sounded a little bit weird, let me know in the comments below. I know I'm having a bit of like some quality issues over here. I'm definitely trying to get my stuff together, but if there was a quality issue, let me know. I will try my best to look into it. I love you guys. Make sure you're safe in whatever you do tonight and safe whatever you do for the rest of the year. I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.